The Help Show is a podcast dedicated to connecting individuals to mental health resources in the community. The Help Show is more than a podcast. It is a movement focused on change. Our objectives are to change the perception and stigma associated with mental health, encourage those with mental health disease to get help, foster access to mental health resources, and remove barriers to mental health resources, including those encountered in underserved communities. We remain committed to supporting the mental health needs of the community during the COVID-19 pandemic. Though the world has changed dramatically in a short period of time, The Help Show is here to help and navigate through the changes and address your mental health needs. Seek help when needed. If distress impacts your daily life for several days or weeks, talk to a clergy member, counselor, or doctor, or contact SAMHSA Helpline at 1-800-985-5990. The crisis worker will work to ensure that you feel safe and help identify options and information about mental health services in your area. Your call is confidential and free. This podcast is sponsored by Good Co-working. Good Co-working is the first solar-powered co-working community in the world focused on cultivating profitable businesses that do right by the people plus the planet, all while keeping you safe in a beautiful plant-filled wellness center space. Get an address for your business, which comes with 2 daytime co-working days per month to get your meetings done, all for the quarterly cost of $150. Good Work have many membership options, from frequent flyer to office rental, so let Good Co-working help you find just the right space to help you balance your life and work. Located in Dallas, Texas, just south of Deep Ellum. Check out goodcoworking.co and tell them The Help Show sent you. Today's special guest is head coach of Florida Memorial Universe basketball team, Ansar Alamin. Ansar began his coaching career with the Oakland Soldier AAU program powerhouse in Northern California. The Soldier program has produced such NBA players as Chauncey Billups, Drew Gooden, Chuck Hayes, and LeBron James. It is there, at the grassroots level, that Alamin began to develop his expertise in the world of basketball. Alamin has been highly successful at both the AAU and collegiate and NBA levels. Through this experience, Alamin has encountered numerous basketball legends, all-stars, and Hall of Fame coaches. Ansar, you the man. You the man. You the man.
Thank you.
Very impressive, extremely impressive. You, from like high school to college to pro, it's like you know every aspect of sports. From overseas, you got it, man.
Hey, I've worked very hard, so but this is a great subject, and it's crazy because there's so many things that you talked about inside of the numbers that I can't wait to dive into.
Oh man, I can't wait. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. And we call that the TTT. We call that thank you, because we're beyond grateful. So I guess it's time to get this podcast going.
So NiEtta gave me some questions I'm supposed to ask, but I got to ask one before I get there.
Okay.
When she told me you were coming on today, I was like beyond thrilled. I was like, this man's a legend. He's done a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that's really amazed me is your ability, I guess, to really get inside of people's heads and motivate them to be better. How do you do that?
It is, it's crazy because I'm dealing with that now at this level. And as you've read, I've had so much success with just getting into people's heads and being able to help them become great. And I'm trying to figure that out with the group that I have now, because it's different. It's like with certain players, like you mentioned, Sean Marion. With Sean Marion, it was just about, you can do this, and then he went out and did it. You know what I mean? It's a story that I'll never forget with Carmelo Anthony. I had Carmelo Anthony for the 2002 draft, and we were sitting there. I think it was 2002, 2003, whichever draft it was. So I think it's 2003. So we were doing pre-draft training, and I'm telling him, I'm like, man, you could average, 16, 17 points a game. And he looked at me with the dirtiest look anybody has ever looked at me. He said, I'm averaging 20. and then he went out and did it. And it's just the confidence that he had inside of him. You know what I mean? Where if with certain people I'm learning, they already have the it. You just have to bring it out. You know what I mean? And if someone doesn't have the it, that's why this show is actually good, because you can figure out what's going on.
Okay. Well, so the question NiEtta's got me asking. So I want to talk a little bit about the whole idea of the things that the guys you're working with are dealing with. We see a lot of trauma in society. Folks are dealing with all kind of stuff every day. Many guys come from impoverished backgrounds. They're coming from the streets. This is the first big break, whether it's college or pro, and this is the chance that I got to like really go out there and do it. So there's a lot of pressure there to begin with. And then as you look at somebody like Colin Kaepernick, who's seeing all this and kind of stands up, and you see the reaction back from that, I'm guessing it's got to be fairly confusing for a young man to kind of think through. So as you kind of think about, the profession, coaching, how do you help, the average African-American minority basketball player really think about how to deal with the racism, trauma that exists out there in sports right now?
Well, I think one of the I want to start with one of the statistics that you named, and I think NiEtta said it about when a young man makes it to the pros, that all of the issues go away. Your slate is washed clean once you make it to the NBA, NFL, MLB, whatever that is. And I'm gonna answer your question, but I'm gonna answer it this way by starting with my favorite player that I ever trained. His name was Tito Maddox. You can look him up. He was at Fresno State. And with LeBron, I got 60 men that I've trained that played in the NBA, and still to this day, Tito's my favorite, because I think Tito was my biggest failure, because I was young when I was training Tito. I was early 20s. And all it was about for me was helping a young man get to the NBA, because like NiEtta said, all their problems go away. So Tito refused to go to class. He refused. It's a funny story that I always tell people. It's two stories I tell people about Tito. One time Tito went to class and he asked the professor, he said, what's it going to take to get an A in this class? And the professor said, you got to get 800 points. Okay. What about a B? They're going to have to get 700 points. He looked around a little bit. He said, okay. And a C. He said, Tito, it's 100 points each time. It'll be 600 points. He said, okay. And a D? He said, Tito, it'll be 500 points. Tito said, well, give me all my classwork right now, because I'm not coming back to class, right? So he was like, I'm never coming back to class. So, in college basketball, working for Jerry Tarkanian, you had to do class checks to make sure that people were in class during that time. So we went to Tito's class to see if he was in there. We checked the class. Tito's nowhere to be found. So we like, Tito, we see Tito a little bit later. We say, Tito, you didn't go to class. He said, I did go to class. I said, Tito, you didn't go to class. He said, I did go to class. Tito, we were at your class. You did not go. He said, I did go to class. I went to class. I looked in and I left. Right? So he did go to class, technically. You know what I mean? And Tito listened to everything that I told him. If I told Tito to do anything that had to do with basketball, he was going to do it. No questions asked. Whatever it was, he did it. I never told Tito to go to class. I never told Tito, hey, man, be a good person. I never told Tito to do any of these things. The only thing that we did was work on basketball. And then I ended up leaving the final year that he played, and I left and went to University of Missouri. So he started out having a great season. He got mixed up with an agent and messed his season up, and then he ended up getting drafted in the second round. So boom, he got drafted. He still made it. You know what I mean? So the problems are still gone because he made it to the NBA. No, because the pressures of his friends back home, the pressures of the fact that he was in a gang in LA. All of those pressures were still there. Now it became even worse because he's in the NBA and he has this money and everybody's grabbing on him. So he ended up quitting the NBA after 1 year and said the NBA money was too slow and became a drug dealer and ended up getting shot twice. And it's crazy because you look at it and you say, we should have been there for him more to, he wasn't doing this stuff correct, but because he was so talented, we left all of that alone, and the mental health, a player like Tito, the trauma that he saw growing up and all of the things that happened to him throughout his life, being in a gang and having all of the issues that he had, we didn't address him because he was so talented. So we say, just give him a ball, he'd go out and play, everything will be fine. Well, that wasn't the case because he needed somebody to help him. He needed somebody to say, hey, this is not how we deal with things. Let's talk about the things that are going wrong with you. But none of us at the time, none of us were equipped for that because all we thought was make it to the NBA, your life is better. And that's why I see the things that are going on today. And I'm like, man, I wish we would have known this 20 years ago.
Absolutely. So
that's fascinating. That is such a cautionary tale.
I wouldn't even believe it. Yeah, I'm just kind of sitting here in awe.
Yeah, as a psychiatrist, I was actually at a trauma conference this weekend, and as you were talking, I'm sitting there thinking, man, that just brings it to life of even when you make it, even when things are going well and you got that kind of money, to be able to walk away from it because of all the stuff going in your head is almost mind-boggling for the average person to comprehend.
We have to do a better. Oh, go ahead, NiEtta.
No. But I was going to say there. But at the end of the day, they're still dealing with secondary trauma and vicarious trauma. What me and Dr. Rogers spoke about earlier. The reason Tito was the way that Tito was because his background, which is we were saying generational trauma. We're talking about secondary trauma. We're talking vicarious trauma that you have. Explain it to me, Dr. Rogers. Explain like you explained it to me on the phone, Dr. Rogers.
Well, I think you've got the primary trauma, which is I'm dealing with it. I got shot at. I'm in the gang. Things are happening. But then I think the vicarious and secondary trauma is really what happens to the people around him, because I suspect that Tito was not doing all this in a vacuum. I suspect that it affected a lot of other people along the way, including you, of course, because I mean, you're looking at it many years past it, saying, where did we go wrong with this, and really kind of dissecting it. And so I can only imagine the folks around him and the impact that has on the other players on the team as well, which would be more the secondary trauma that we were talking about earlier tonight.
Definitely. You see it, and that was just one. It was a young man, I won't say his name, that I had recently, and we couldn't have him on our team because he had some things happen in his life. It was some things that happened to him, and it's like, man, the stuff you dealing with is, like when a young man calls you on the phone and he's crying, like, it's something completely wrong. You know what I mean? And it's like, man, basketball is secondary to you getting your life figured out. And it was so crazy. I spoke to someone that was close to him, and they were like, the things that happen to him are the things that people kill people for. You know what I mean? And it's like, dude, this is crazy. Like, you got to get life figured out and forget about basketball.
Absolutely. Or you can't even play the game correctly if you don't figure your life out. It is so true. Basketball is secondary, and what I see with a lot of the athletes, because I know some athletes, is that they put basketball as their primary, and then a lot of times what I learned is that basketball is what saved their lives too. It keeps them structured. You being a coach, you're like a counselor, They need someone to look up to. They need someone to talk to. They need someone to show them guidance. They need a family, because some of them don't even have family. And that's where the stressors come from. So, for that, like, how can you tell your athletes or coaches, that are stressed out, feeling excessive pressure, what signs do you look for? What can be done to manage their stress, or how can you help them create less stress for environments? Well, as you being the coach, you only can do so much, but what can you do?
Well, I think the first thing, as a coach, how everybody's doing. All of your players, all of how everybody's doing. Now, whether you choose to address it that day is one thing, because when you're around people so much, everybody's tendencies. Like, it was a young man that I had last year. I could tell from the way he walked into the gym what type of day he was gonna have. Like, you could already see the energy and how he was going. And like, hey man, you know, come over here, let's talk about it, let's get it understood. And I, this young man, I'm gonna talk about him. It's funny because he's from out here in Florida, but he was, I guess he was the blood or whatever. So when I first saw him, he had a rag on, so I took his rag off him, and he was so mad at me when I took his rag, right? And I took his rag, and then I actually made a call to a guy. His name is Rock Johnson, and I call him Triple OG, and Rock Johnson was so bad when he was young that Jim Brown had to take him in. You know what I mean? To help him out. Like, he was that bad. You know what I mean? And Jim Brown helped him turn his life around. And so I use him anytime I got a kid who has these aspirations or want to do these things. I'm like, hey man, you need to talk to Rock Johnson, because Rock can tell you, the all of the things. Rock's been shot. He had all of the gang stuff. He was in jail. This is funny about. This is not funny, but it's funny. So,
Okay.
in the movie Training Day, when Denzel say shoe program, right? I'm like, I didn't even know that was a real program. And Rock was like, man, I was the first person in the shoe program. I said, oh man, this is crazy, So but he had a conversation with him, and then this young man, he really struggled academically, and I stayed on him and stayed on him and stayed on him, and he actually, it was so funny. He was with a young lady one day. It's a true story. He was with a young lady one day, and I told her to run away and save herself. I said, save yourself. Don't talk to him. And I said, he ain't gonna do nothing but mess your life up. She said, it's too late, coach. He already got me pregnant. I said, oh man. So, right. So, but we worked with him, finally got his grades turned around well enough where he was able to play. He had a really good year, but I'm listening to you, like, this program is great for me, because I'm listening to you talk about the trauma, and I think I finally started to change the way I view it, because we think, oh man, this kid has these problems. Well, no, I think problems and trauma is different. You got things that have happened, and then I had to go back and do my research and have conversations with his mother, and hey, have a hard conversations with him, like, where's your dad? What's going on with your dad? How do you feel about your dad? You know what I mean? And he tells me all the things, and we got it to a point where he was doing really good. You know what I mean? He was really good. I was proud of the direction that he was going in, and then he got stabbed on the beach. And we go to the hospital. My assistant coach and we go to the hospital almost every day. And afterwards, I told him, I said, now who came to see you at the hospital? The girlfriend, who was the mother of his baby. His mother was there, and us as coaches. I said, where are all your gang friends at? Where are all the people that you supposed to be willing to die for, and they supposed to be willing to die for you? Where they at? They should be here in the hospital visiting you every day. And he was like, Coach, I understand now. Now today, he's completely off of all of that stuff. You know what I mean? He has nothing to do with none of it. And he's turning his life around. And I look at it, and he told me, And he told me, he was like, Coach, man, thank you for coming up here every day. He was like, man, my dad didn't come, and I'm like, when
No.
you hear that your son is stabbed, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You drop everything and you
We
get
do
down there. And his dad
Absolutely.
never showed up. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Mm.
So, he view our relationship different now because he's like, man, Coach, you was hard on me, but you're only trying to make my life better. I'm like, yeah, because I've seen the path that you're going on. I've seen that 100 times. I know exactly how that story ends, and we're trying to prevent you from crashing. You know what I mean? And I think, that was so. It was terrible that he was stabbed, but through it all, I think we've got to the other side of it, and now he's ready to live a great life. But
I want to.
back to the question that you asked me. I know everything that's going on with everybody. It
Oh,
just it was funny. One of my assistants, him and his wife were having an issue, and I could tell when I saw him in the morning. I could tell, and I was like, "Hey, man, you need to fix that."
yeah.
I told him you could be right, and you could be right. Now I tell him, I said, "Man, I'm just telling you this. You can be right and stand on your position, or you could be happy. You make the decision which one you want to do. Now you could be right. You could be outside and right."
Uh, you said something earlier, and it kind of made me think. I was working with a young man. This was probably about 4 years ago.
Mhm.
College athlete, and one of the things he said really stuck with me. He said, "I'm on scholarship, but I can't afford to take my girl on a date." He said, "I feel like I can't ask anybody for money. My family has no money. I can't really ask my friends for money. That makes me weak. If anybody else gives me money, it's going to mess up my scholarship potentially."
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I'm wondering, where do you kind of come down on, paying college athletes, giving them a stipend, helping people kind of think about that, and the pay disparities that start to exist in sports in general, kind of, I think, starting in college and kind of expanding out from there.
Mm.
Well, I think first, being a broke college student is a rite of passage. You know what I mean? So for us, you know, we looked at it. I remember, my grandmother or my mother sent me $20, $30. I'm excited. You know what I mean? Like, so being a broke college student, it just was what it was. You know what I mean? And it's a part of the process. I look at I had a I had a young man on my team. His parents gave him like a $1,700 allowance a month, right,
What?
for school, and I'm like, what? I'm like, man, this is why he's not performing, because he has too much stuff given to him easy. Like, you know what I mean? You look at the best players in the world when they were in college. You listen to them tell the stories. They're like, man, we was piecing up money to go get a pizza or whatever. So I understand what he's saying, but he's not the first, and he won't be the last. That was just a part of it. You know what I mean? And we embraced it. You know what I mean? We figured out a way to entertain ourselves. We figured out a way to live a good, fun college life. You know what I mean? But I understand the issues, and I think the paying, when and if they start paying, it kind of
Yeah.
takes the hunger away a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, it's a it's a part of it. Like, you don't want to feel like, my personal opinion, you don't want to feel like you've arrived. You want to feel like, okay, I'm one step closer, but I gotta keep working. You know what I mean? I think, and when you get too much, then you become lazy, and the hunger's not there. You're like, oh man, I'm just gonna do this. Or you wanna keep some sort of incentive to keep you pushing to get to the next level, if the next level is something that you aspire to do.
I think what you're saying is true because it's like having that award. It's like you worked your whole life. In college, you're almost there. You got to work
Mm-hmm.
a tad bit harder. Okay, you
Mm-hmm.
get a job. You might have that's real life. Then when you get that moment when you're called and they call your name and you've been drafted, you truly have been arrived. You truly have arrived. And so I think what you're saying is, so me personally, this is my personal opinion, Dr. Rogers, they shouldn't pay them. They shouldn't. They shouldn't. They should still work hard. Because when I was in college, I had 2-3 jobs. Okay. So, and I was an athlete. So I think that if you're a college athlete and you guys might not like what I'm saying, oh well, you need to work. You need to focus. You need to make
But
sure
you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to work as a college athlete. You're not allowed because you have practice and all this, so you don't have time to work.
Okay, you teaching me something. So they can do.
That's more of the issue.
Yeah, that's the challenge. But I love what you said about the being hungry for the next level, though, because I think that sometimes that next level is trying to go pro, but sometimes that next level is being successful in a career.
Exactly.
And I look at the number of college athletes who are very hungry in college, and they're hungry walking out into that first job too, and they just go out and kill it.
No, exactly.
because that hunger's there.
And I'll tell you, I've had some ominous stories, but this is a great one, right? It was a kid named Trey Haygood, and Trey played at Prairie View, graduated, went to came here actually to University of Miami, got his master's. He 2 months later he got a job, and he called me. He said, "Coach," and he was good enough that he could have played professionally overseas, but he had a plan already. He said, "I'm going to graduate. I'm going to grad school. I'm going to start working." And he called me 3 summers ago, and he said, "Coach, I'm 25 years old. I'm making 6 figures, and I don't know what to do with all my money."
The Help Show wants to thank all of our partners: Auckland Research Associates, NJI Holding, Good Co-working, Gift and Mind Foundation, Duke's Hair Studios, and White Pearl Inc. We'd like to take a moment and thank everyone in our listening audience for listening today. We'd also like to remind everyone that we are a nonprofit organization operating entirely off the generous support of our donors. If you would like to give to our organization, we appreciate you. You can send your donation via Cash App, # The Help Show, or on our website at www.thehelpshow.org. There's no donation too small. Every dollar given will strengthen our efforts. If you'd like to donate $1,500 or more and become a VIP sponsor, then we have some additional packages listed on our website. And you can visit us at www.thehelpshow.org for more details. Stay tuned for part 2 of episode 102, Major Problems, Minor Recognition, Minorities, and Mental Health in Sports.